It starts with a routine you don't question. You're halfway through a double shift, logging incident reports that no one reads unless something goes wrong. Timestamps, minor altercations, inventory checks. You keep your head down, follow procedure, move from one task to the next. The job is simple if you keep it that way. You don't try to understand the people behind the files. You don't try to fix anything. You just keep the system moving. At 1812, the call comes in. Segregation unit breach. You freeze for half a second, just long enough to register that it doesn't happen. Not here, not in that wing. That's where they keep the ones who don't break. The radio repeats it, louder this time. Multiple cells compromised, staff unresponsive. You're already moving. No one tells you to. You grab the override keycard from the wall safe. That's not protocol. That's above your level. You know that, but the supervisor isn't responding, and the backup team is 5 minutes out. 5 minutes is enough for everything to collapse. You reach the segregation corridor. The doors are open. That's the first thing that's wrong. The second is the silence. No alarms, no shouting, no movement. Just open doors. You step in. 3 inmates are out of their cells, standing in the center of the corridor. Not pacing, not rushing, waiting. One of them looks at you like he expected you. You don't raise your voice. You don't issue commands. You've already seen what happens when that fails. You close the outer door behind you. Lock it. Now it's contained. Now it's just you and them. You move slowly to the control panel. Your hand doesn't shake. You don't let it. You start sealing internal doors, cutting off sections of the corridor, isolating movement one segment at a time. You don't give them space to spread. One steps forward. "You shouldn't be here," he says. You don't answer. You hit the gas release. It fills the corridor in seconds, controlled, measured, enough to drop them without killing them. You watch them fall, one by one. The last one keeps his eyes on you until he can't. By the time backup arrives, the corridor is sealed again. The report will say you acted outside protocol. It will also say you prevented escalation. The supervisor returns 2 hours later. He doesn't ask why you took the keycard. He asks how you knew what to do. You don't answer that either. 3 days later, you're reassigned. No explanation, no paperwork you can see, new access level, new doors open when you walk up to them, and you understand something you didn't before. This place doesn't promote based on rules. It promotes based on control. You stop working intake. You stop logging minor incidents. You're moved into oversight. At first, it feels like a lateral shift. You're still inside the system, still following routines, still checking boxes. But the boxes are different now. You're not recording behavior. You're directing it. You monitor 6 blocks at once. Movement schedules, meal rotations, restricted access times. You start noticing patterns you never had time to see before. Who requests what? Who times their movements to coincide with others? Who never asks for anything at all? That last group matters most. The ones who don't ask. The ones who don't react. They're the ones who organize. You begin adjusting schedules by minutes. You separate individuals who never appear connected on paper. You delay certain requests, approve others. You create friction where there wasn't any. Small changes, but they ripple. A planned fight doesn't happen because 2 people never cross paths. A message doesn't get delivered because a routine is interrupted. An influence chain weakens because you isolate one link. No one tells you to do this, but no one stops you either. And when incidents decrease on your watch, people notice. You're called into a meeting. No official agenda, no notes taken. They ask how you're doing it. You explain just enough. You don't give them everything. That's your first real decision. Information is power, and giving it all away makes you replaceable. You learn that quickly. You're moved again, this time into intelligence coordination. The files here are different. Not behavior logs, networks, connections, financial traces that shouldn't exist inside a prison. You see how money moves through accounts tied to people who are supposed to have nothing. Commissary purchases that signal more than hunger. Patterns in phone calls that map out entire organizations beyond these walls. You start building profiles, not just of individuals, but of systems. Who leads? Who enforces? Who communicates? Who can be pressured? You don't need to see them to control them anymore. You move them through the system like pieces, transfers that break alliances, privileges granted to create dependence, restrictions applied to test reactions. You watch how they adapt. You learn from it. You refine. You begin to understand that control isn't physical, it's structural. You're not managing prisoners, you're managing the environment they exist in. And if you control the environment, you control the outcome. That realization changes how you think. You stop seeing people, you see variables. You get your first external request 6 months later. No official channel, no documentation, just a file placed on your desk. One inmate, high-risk designation, no detailed history. The request is simple. Limit his communication. You look into his profile. He doesn't stand out on the surface, but the deeper you go, the more connections you find. Financial links, coordinated activity across multiple facilities. He's not a leader in the obvious sense. He's a connector. You adjust his environment, reduce contact windows, alter movement schedules, interrupt patterns. Within 3 weeks, the network tied to him starts to fracture. Messages slow, transactions stop, incidents in other facilities drop. No one officially credits you, but another file appears on your desk, then another. You don't ask who's sending them, because you already know the answer doesn't matter. What matters is that you're being used, and you're allowing it, because it gives you reach. You move up again. Deputy oversight. Now, you don't just manage systems, you design them. You're given authority over resource allocation, budget lines that don't get audited the way others do. You decide where to install additional surveillance, which units get upgraded containment, which inmates get reassigned to experimental isolation protocols. You justify everything with data. Reduced incidents, improved compliance, stability. That's the language that keeps questions away. You start seeing the cost, not in reports, in people, inmates who stop responding entirely, staff who request transfers after working your units. You don't ignore it, but you don't stop either, because every metric says you're succeeding, and success is the only thing that matters here. You're brought into conversations you weren't meant to hear before, interagency coordination, transfers across borders, facilities that don't officially exist. You approve movements without full information. You don't need it. You trust the system because you are part of it now. That's the shift. You're no longer inside the machine. You are one of the parts that keeps it running. You become warden without ceremony. No announcement, just authority. Everything routes through you. Incidents, requests, external communications. You don't walk the floors anymore. You don't need to. You see everything from above. You make decisions that affect hundreds of lives without ever standing in front of them. You authorize force. You deny appeals. You approve removals. You start noticing how quiet your days have become. No chaos reaches you directly anymore. Only filtered versions, controlled narratives. You begin to rely on them. Because it's efficient. Because it's necessary. Because questioning everything slows the system down. And slowing the system creates risk. You can't allow that. You're contacted by groups that don't identify themselves. They don't ask for access. They request cooperation. You negotiate terms, not out of defiance, out of calculation. What you give, what you keep, what you gain in return. You understand leverage now, better than anyone. You hold people who matter to systems far beyond your own. That makes you valuable, and it makes you dangerous. You start shaping outcomes beyond your facility. Information you release triggers actions elsewhere. A transfer here leads to a disruption there. A restriction here leads to a collapse somewhere else. You see the reach. You don't talk about it, because there's no one left to talk to who would understand. Years pass, not marked by events, but by decisions. Accumulated, layered, each one building on the last. You're given access to something new. A centralized system, multiple facilities, unified control, data streams from across regions. You don't just manage one prison anymore. You oversee the network. You see everything. Movement patterns across thousands of inmates, connections that span countries, operations that continue regardless of physical containment. You start restructuring it, standardizing protocols, implementing control measures that remove variability. The system becomes predictable, efficient, stable. You remove uncertainty wherever you find it, because uncertainty is risk, and risk is what you're trained to eliminate. But something changes. The more you control, the less you interact. You stop making direct decisions. You set parameters. The system executes them. You monitor. You adjust. You intervene only when something falls outside expectation. It rarely does. You've built it too well for that. You sit in a room with no direct connection to the outside world. Screens, data, feeds.
Everything you need. Nothing you don't. You don't remember the last time you spoke to someone face to face about anything that mattered. Communication is filtered now, structured.
Efficient, impersonal. You prefer it that way. It removes variables. It removes complications. It removes you from the consequences, but you still see them. In numbers, in trends, in absences. You know when someone disappears from the system. You know when they're removed entirely. No record, no trace. You don't ask where they go, because the system doesn't require that information to function, and neither do you. That realization settles slowly. You've built something that no longer depends on you. It runs because it's designed to run. You're still at the center, but the center is less important than it used to be. You start noticing redundancies, backup systems, contingencies, processes that activate without your input. It's efficient. It's necessary. It's also a warning. You think about the first day, the corridor, the open doors, the moment you stepped in and decided to act. You were necessary then, critical. Without you, the system would have failed in that moment. Now the system would correct itself, with or without you. That thought doesn't leave. It sits with you, quiet, persistent. You don't change anything. You can't, because any deviation introduces risk, and risk is the one thing you've spent years eliminating. So you continue, monitoring, adjusting, maintaining, until one day a notification appears. Routine, intake, new officer assigned. No special designation, no flagged history, just another name entering the system. You pull up the file. You don't know why. You watch his first shift through the feed. He moves carefully, follows procedure, keeps his head down. You recognize it. You watch longer than necessary. There's nothing unusual, nothing that stands out, and yet you keep watching, because you understand something he doesn't, not yet. You see the system he's stepping into, the pressure, the structure, the invisible rules that will shape every decision he makes from here on out. He thinks he's processing inmates. He thinks he's doing a job. He doesn't see the network, the control, the weight of it. But he will, the same way you did. Not all at once, but gradually, through decisions, through consequences, through small moments that shift everything. You close the file. The system continues running. It doesn't pause. It doesn't wait. Somewhere below you, a door closes behind him for the first time. He doesn't realize what that sound means yet. You do, and you know exactly where it leads.